this is no big deal. I'll drive it over and I'll help you cover your windshield. And within 10 minutes, true to his word, there he was, saw him pull in, and him and I walked out, and he went on one side of the car and I went on the other, and we went to drape this tarp over my car to, because I'm materialistic, I might ruin my interior. On the upper passenger side corner of the windshield, there was a tuft of hair and a piece of a human forehead. And I panicked. And I said, please take me back. And he did. I got in his truck and we turned the corner, and that's how close it was. You always hear that these things happen so close to where you are, and it was just that close. And as soon as we turned the corner, I could see that there was police cars and I could see that there was an ambulance, and I knew that they don't call an ambulance for a deer, and I knew it was serious. And now I have this man with me, and I panicked again. I didn't want to get him in trouble. So I said, please take me home. And he did. He turned his truck around, he dropped me off, he went home, and I went inside and I did what every good alcoholic would do, and I poured myself a drink. And I kept drinking for the next 2 hours because, you see, I knew that they would find me. I knew that there would be a knock on my door. I knew that there would be a policeman on the other side of it. And I knew that whatever just happened was going to be life-altering. I didn't run. I didn't hide in my car. I just waited. And eventually, after a couple hours, there was that knock, and there was that policeman, and he said, Miss Eshman, it looks as though your vehicle's been in an accident. We need to bring you in for questioning. And they did. After 5 hours or more, they told me that I'd struck and killed a 45-year-old man that was walking in the road. And I didn't see him because I didn't stop. And I didn't see him because I didn't check. I knew my life was never going to be the same. I knew the jig was up. I knew it was over. Everything's over. And I knew the only answer for me was to commit suicide. It was my only chance. I was bailed out of the police station that night because the detectives didn't want to see somebody like me go to jail, and they begged me to please have a friend come up with some money. They even called the judge themselves. The detectives called the judge and had him lower my bail so it was affordable. A friend showed up on Thanksgiving Day with a wad of cash and bailed me out, and I walked home from the police station. My brother was somewhere behind me in a station wagon screaming at me, but I walked home, and I knew that I had to end this because it was over. I knew whatever was going to happen in my life is far too difficult for me to handle. I knew that I would never be able to get past the blackness in my soul for what I had done and what I was responsible for. And I went on a mission to kill myself. Of course, now my parents know, everybody knows, it's in the paper. And my mother and father begged me to please do two things. Get psychiatric help. Because they knew I was teetering. I was going for it. And they said, get an attorney, Rose. You're going to need one. And I did both those things. I checked myself into a psychiatric unit. They kept me for 11 days. At the end of 11 days, they said, you're not well enough to go home by yourself, Rose. And they were right. And so they made me go to this residential living facility for adults in crisis. And I did. I went to this facility and I did what I thought made perfect sense. I had an affair with my counselor. And as soon as I got out, I don't think I was out a couple of weeks, I moved in with him and I was drinking again. I tried going to a couple AA meetings, but it wasn't for me. The only thing that was going to end this was ending this. I was so hopeless, and I was so dead inside that I didn't think I could ever get past it. I used to drive to the scene of the accident 6 times a day, sometimes more. And I would just look, say, how could this have happened? And then I would think, what do you mean, Rose? You've been a train wreck your whole life. It just caught up to me. And then I couldn't stand to live in my own skin. The only way I could get through a day was to drink. And I kept trying to commit suicide 3 or 4 times, and somebody would always find me. And nothing was working. Eventually this guy said to me, Rose, if you don't stop drinking, you're just going to have to leave. And I don't take very well to people giving me ultimatums, so he went to the liquor store, and he went to work, I went to the liquor store. And he told me I had to leave, and I did. I came down here to Florida, which is technically bail jumping because I was out on bail. I was out on bail for 2.5 years because I decided to take my case to trial. And it was never a matter of innocence or guilt for me. I knew I was guilty. I thought if I could go into a courtroom and I could let this man's parents see me and his family see me, and I could say I was sorry for what I had done, that it would somehow alleviate the blackness in my soul. But it took 2.5 years to get there. And during that time, I couldn't live comfortably in my own skin if I wasn't anesthetized in some way. So when he threw me out, I had nowhere else to go. I informed my attorney I'd be going to Florida, and I did. I moved down to Florida with my parents. And that was the beginning of the end. I just figured, well, jig's up here. I'm going to have to do it right in their spare bedroom. I'm going to have to end it all. And I went on a mission to kill myself. And my parents did everything they could to save me. They watched me. They loved me. They used to take me to this place called Weeki Wachee to watch the sunset and just spend time with me. And I didn't realize how precious a gift that was that they gave me of their time and their love just to try to keep me out of my own way. Eventually, my brother-in-law, who had found sobriety in AA, came to a family dinner because I wanted no part of this happy horse shit. I didn't want anything to do with it. And he was high on AA, loving it, going to meetings, chairing meetings, blah, 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 blah. And he looked across the dinner table at me and he said, hey, Rose, I'm going to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous tonight. Why don't you come with me? And I've never hated him as much as I hated him at that moment. I hated him. And I knew when my father, again, like I was 17 all over again, just looked at me over the top of his glasses and said, baby, I don't think you have a choice. And I went to my very first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous in Florida. Couldn't pick my head up, looked at my shoes, cried for 3 weeks, and every day this guy showed up. And he took me to another meeting. And he showed up. And he took me to another meeting. And eventually I could get more than my name is Rose and I'm an alcoholic passed out of my mouth because I couldn't look at you because I was so ashamed of me. But eventually, when your head starts to clear and you start doing the next right thing and you don't drink and you get a sponsor, you start to see that maybe there's a little flicker of hope, just a little bit. And I got that little flicker of hope. Unfortunately, I also got the idea that getting back together with this guy in New Jersey was a good one. And I started making trips back and forth to New Jersey, because he becomes my higher power again and blah, blah, blah. AA is not important. He's going to fix me. See, everything fixes me. Men fix me, money fixes me, shoes fix me, cars fix me. Everything fixes me. Alcohol wasn't fixing me anymore, so this guy had to fix me. And on one of the trips, I was there, I got a call from my sister that said, Dad's really sick, you got to get home. And I came home, and within a month, my father died. The blessing in that, and the reason I mention that is I was sober when my father passed away. And that was a gift. Because if my life not gone the way it went, if this whole thing hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been there, holding his hand when he left this world. Getting an opportunity to tell him I am sorry for the things that I did to hurt you. And I was sober and I did it. And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity. Not long after we buried my dad, I decided that, my trial was coming up in a few months, and I helped my mother get her life in order, and I got on a plane and I went back to New Jersey because I was going to spend my last couple of months before trial with this man because, again, I'm in love. You know how it goes. And that's what I did. And I don't think my feet were on the ground in New Jersey when I started drinking again. And I also knew I was pregnant. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't take a test. I knew. The women in the audience may understand this. I knew. I've never been married. I've never had children, but I knew. And I didn't tell anybody, and I didn't stop drinking. And I didn't tell anybody, and I did other things. And I didn't tell anybody. And eventually he gave me that same ultimatum. If you drink again, I will put you on a plane to Florida. He went to work. I went to the liquor store. The next day I was on a plane back to Florida. He was true to his word. He paid $750 one way to get rid of me. And I cried the whole way. I think they put an air marshal next to me because they thought I was going to do something on the plane. And I landed in Tampa, and I went right to the bar, and I sat there with 2 big 7 and 7s, and my sister walked in with my AA sponsor, and she said, how are you doing? And I said, I'm drunk, how are you? And she said, I'm pretty good, and a little better than you. And I said, and I think I'm pregnant. And that's the only time I ever uttered those words. As soon as I got back to Florida, I started going back to AA. What I didn't do is I didn't stop drinking. I would illegally drive my mother's car because the state of New Jersey has already taken my license away because I was involved in an accident with a fatality. They'll take it away for 3.5 years. I have no license, but I'm taking my mother's car, who's a recent widow, going to the liquor store, and then going to an AA meeting, watching the clock, hoping nobody knows my name in the room, for 9 o'clock to come so I can get out of there and go home and get drunk. And I did that for months. I went to a meeting every single night, and right after that meeting, I got drunk. And I cannot tell you the torture of living that kind of a lie in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. To be using and to sit in a room where there's people actually recovering. And to know that you have nothing to share, so please don't call on me. And you're not able to tell anybody you're a liar because you're a liar. You can't look anybody in the eyes because you're dishonest. And eventually it came time to go to New Jersey, and I stood trial. My trial was 3.5 weeks long. During the course of the trial, I miscarried. It was a blessing. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And then I was coupled with the guilt. I'm on trial for killing a man because I choose to drink and drive, and now I've killed this innocent fetus. And at the end of a 3-week period where my mother and my uncle pretty much were on me the whole time, I was found guilty, and I was escorted to the county jail. I could get bailed out pending my sentence, and I begged my mother. I called her probably 50 times on that first day and begged her to please get me out of jail. It was only $50,000. You know, don't you have that in your back pocket? If it was one of your sons, you'd get them out of jail. And I called her, and I'd hang up on her. I'd call her, and I'd hang up on her. And there was no bond, $50,000 cash. Because I was a flight risk, because I'd been living in Florida, jumping bail. Of course I'm a flight risk. And eventually she came to the county jail, and she looked at me, and she said, "Rosellen, I love you, but I'm going to save your life. I'm not getting you out of jail." And my attorney said, "Isabel, you can do this." And she said, "Are you going to watch her? Are you going to save her from killing herself?" And she let me sit there for 4.5 months. Eventually, in June of 2001, I was sentenced to 12 years and 30 days in the state penitentiary. 8 days later, I was shipped off to the only female penitentiary in the state of New Jersey. It's only one. Everybody's there. And I knew as soon as I got in there and they dumped me and I heard that gate slam that I was never going to make it. I can't do that. I'm not like them. I was exactly like them. I had made a choice that had a consequence, and all I was doing was getting my consequence. But not me. I remember the first week, and they put you in a big gymnasium, and there's 64 beds, 32 bunk beds, and you're with everybody. They don't sort you out at first in the beginning where I was, so you're in there with everybody. No matter what they did, you're in there with them until they sort you out. And I remember just screaming and crying into my pillow, thinking, I'll never get through this. I'll never get through this. For the first 3 years of my sentence, I spent it in the maximum security part of the prison. Because in New Jersey, my crime is a violent crime. I'm a violent offender because my car became my weapon. And for the first 3 years, I was angry. 2 years in, the man I had been seeing broke up with me. He couldn't handle it anymore. And I'm thinking, you can't handle it anymore. What do you have to handle? Because I couldn't see that for everything that I was going through, other people have their own set of issues that they deal with in life. For every bar in my prison, he had a responsibility. And it was the greatest gift he could have given me, but I couldn't see it at that time, and I was angry. And there was no AA in the maximum security part of this prison. There was Al-Anon, which floors me. Okay, because 85% of your people incarcerated are there for drug or alcohol-related crimes. So, you give them a program like Al-Anon, and no offense to Al-Anon, I'm not here because my mother drinks. So I was pissed. So I was angry, and I stayed angry, and I knew I would drink again. Never in that first 3-year period had it occurred to me that I would stop drinking. I was clean. I didn't use in prison. And I didn't use for one reason. Not because I'm a saint and I made the choice to be sober and, oh, this is so bad, I never want this to happen again. I made the choice because there wasn't enough. I couldn't get enough of what I needed to make it worthwhile. There wasn't enough drugs. There wasn't enough booze to make this worthwhile because I'm getting caught. And they're throwing me in solitary confinement, so I better be drunk for a week. I'm not giving you all my money that I have for a little half pint. I'm not doing it. So it's the fact that I'm an absolute glutton that kept me clean for 3 years. After 3 years, I was classified to the minimum part of the prison, and I got involved in a program called Puppies Behind Bars. And it's a program where inmates raise dogs for law enforcement. And I